feel like you just need to like hit the reset button
Yeah.
mentally, spiritually. Yeah, me too. That's kind of what reading these excerpts from Jung's Red Book feels like, you know. They're super dense, full of symbolism, but like there's this roadmap in here, I think, for that kind of reset.
It's interesting you say that about a reset because one of the first things that really struck me was how Jung talks about this journey into what he calls the desert of the soul. Like he needed to clear everything out to really see what was going on under the surface.
Okay, so this desert idea, he's not talking about an actual desert, right? More of a metaphor for like inner exploration.
Exactly. It's that space where you go when you really go inward and confront those parts of yourself that you usually keep hidden, even from yourself. And Jung really believed that this inner exploration, this desert journey, was crucial for what he called individuation, which is that process of becoming a whole person, integrated.
Okay, I can see why you'd need a reset for that, like hitting the wilderness trail, but for your soul. But then it gets even more interesting because he connects this whole inner desert thing to the death and rebirth of God.
Yeah, and it's such a powerful concept. And it's
Right.
so much deeper than just saying God is dead like Nietzsche. It's more like he was wrestling with how those old traditional religious structures were failing people in the modern world, just not really providing the meaning they used to.
So if the old gods are gone, then what takes their place? Does Jung offer any answers in these excerpts?
He doesn't exactly give us like a step-by-step guide or anything,
Mm-hmm.
but he hints at the possibility of a new kind of spiritual experience, one that comes from within when you encounter your own unconscious. He even uses this phrase, a new God.
So it's like we each have to find our own personal mythology, our own way of connecting to something bigger than ourselves.
It can feel like a pretty daunting task when you put it like that.
Just a bit.
And Jung doesn't shy away from the challenges. Like he actually uses this image of the murdered hero to show how we have to let go of old ways of thinking, dogmas, to make room for something new.
And that's where Philemon enters the picture.
Right.
This wise old man character who keeps popping up in the Red Book, who guides Jung along. So who or what is he really, like an angel on his shoulder?
I think it's more accurate to see Philemon as a personification of Jung's unconscious, specifically the part of us that holds wisdom and intuition. And notice how he challenges Jung's assumptions, pushes him to think beyond just his rational, ego-driven mind.
So if our own personal Philemon took us on a deep dive, would he like hand us a scuba tank first or just tell us to sink or swim?
That's a great question. And it gets to the core of what Jung is trying to tell us. There's that part where Philemon actually tells Jung to climb down into your depths, sink. He's urging him to confront that shadow side, all the stuff he wants to keep hidden.
He's like the real journey starts when you stop trying to stay afloat in the shallows.
Exactly. And that takes some serious courage. Because the unconscious mind isn't always a pleasant place. There are definitely some dark corners in there, uncomfortable truths, and maybe even a few serpents.
Speaking of serpents, there are a lot of snakes in these excerpts. Not exactly the cuddliest image. What's with all the serpent symbolism?
The serpent is actually a really important symbol for Jung. It represents the unconscious itself, that primal force that can be destructive but also transformative.
So it's not all bad news then.
Not at all. Remember that line, the serpent is also life? The serpent might have brought an end to paradise, yeah, but he also brought knowledge, awareness, and the potential for growth.
It's like the saying, sometimes you have to break down to break through. The serpent represents that breaking down part.
Yes, and the breaking through.
Yeah.
Think about how a snake sheds its skin. It's a powerful metaphor, right, for transformation, leaving the old behind, embracing the new.
Okay, that makes sense. But he also talks about the serpent bringing down the gods with its poison. That doesn't sound so positive.
Right. But it's not really about good or bad. It's about power.
Yeah.
The serpent's poison is like the raw, untamed energy of the unconscious, which can be overwhelming, even destructive if you don't acknowledge it. But here's the thing. Jung believed that this same energy, if you confront it, understand it, can actually become a source of immense wisdom and creativity.
So how do you find that balance? How do we tap into the serpent's wisdom without getting bitten?
That is the question. And that's where our deep dive continues.
So we were talking about serpents and poison and the power of the unconscious. It's a lot to wrap your head around.
It really is.
But for some reason, I keep coming back to this idea of a new god that Jung mentioned. So like if the old gods are dead, like he was saying, what does it even mean to talk about a new one?
Yeah, that's a question that really fascinated Jung. And it's a big part of understanding his whole project in the Red Book. He actually uses this phrase, the conception of the God, to describe what he's getting at. And I think it's important to remember that he's not talking about a deity in the traditional sense here. Like, this isn't about starting a new religion or finding a new idol to worship.
So it's more about an internal thing, something that happens within each person.
Exactly. Jung really believed that this new God
Mm.
emerges from inside of us, from that point where our conscious and unconscious minds meet, out of the ashes of our old ways of thinking, really. Those old beliefs that no longer work for us.
That's interesting, but this new God, the way he describes it, it doesn't sound very comforting. Like he uses words like pain and fear, and honestly, it's a little unsettling.
It's true. Jung definitely doesn't try to make it sound easy. He really believed that facing your unconscious, your shadow side, it's going to be hard. It's not about reaching some perfectly blissful state. It's more about learning to accept every part of yourself, even the light and the dark, the beautiful and the terrifying.
So you're saying this new God, it challenges us, even frightens us. If that's the case, then why would anyone go looking for that?
Because in that struggle, in that confrontation with the unknown,
Mm.
that's where real change happens. Remember how the serpent's poison can also be healing? This new God isn't about comfort or getting easy answers. It's about facing those difficult truths, the stuff we'd rather avoid, and coming out stronger on the other side.
It reminds me of that other image he uses, the murder of the hero. Kind of a violent image, but maybe also necessary. Like something has to be sacrificed to make way for the new.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. That's such a good connection. Think about it.
Hmm.
The hero, as an archetype, represents all those traditional values, the way
Mhm.
things are supposed to be. And Jung is saying sometimes those structures, those old ways of thinking have to be torn down completely to make room for real growth. It's about leaving those old stories behind, the maps that aren't leading us anywhere anymore,
Hmm.
so we can actually find our own way.
So we've got the serpent representing that power of the unconscious, and then this new God coming from our depths. And then on top of that, you have this idea of the hero being killed off to clear the way for something new. Intense.
Yeah.
How do we actually apply all of this to our lives?
That is the question, isn't it? I think Jung would probably say there's no one right answer for everyone. But I think these excerpts give us some hints. Like, remember how we were talking about Philemon guiding Jung down into his depths? And Philemon tells him to sit yourself down, be calm. It's like he's saying, stop resisting it. Just let go and see where it takes you.
So it's about trusting that there's some kind of knowledge, even wisdom working in our unconscious. Even when it feels terrifying, there's something good that can come out of it.
That's a great way to put it. It's about trusting that the journey itself, even if it's scary or painful, it's leading us somewhere good, toward a deeper understanding of ourselves and how we fit into the world.
We've been on quite a journey, haven't we? Through Jung's Red Book, all this talk about deserts and serpents and even the death of God. Intense stuff. But one thing that really stands out to me from these excerpts you've picked is how important it was for Jung to really face those uncomfortable truths, the stuff most of us would rather avoid.
Absolutely. He really believed that's where the real transformation is,
Yep.
that you have to go through the fire to get to the good stuff. And I think that's so evident in the Four Sermons to the Dead.
Those sermons are something else, like little concentrated bits of wisdom, even if they're hard to understand sometimes. But one that I found really interesting is how he deals with good and evil. It's not your typical this is good, that is bad kind of thing, right?
No, not at all. He actually says the pairs of opposites are the qualities of the pleroma. And remember how the pleroma is like this realm of ultimate oneness? So he's saying that even good and evil, even light and dark, they all come from that same source.
Okay, I get that. But like, how do we even begin to process that? Don't we automatically see things as opposites, good or bad?
We do. It's natural. Jung isn't saying those distinctions don't matter,
Yeah.
but he is pushing us to go deeper, past those easy categories. Like, true understanding comes when you can see how everything's connected, even the stuff that seems completely opposite.
So it's like he's saying make space for both, that light and shadow inside us and in the world.
Exactly. And in that space, that's where the magic happens. Like when Philemon tells Jung that magic is something we're all born with, Jung really believed that we find that magic again when we stop rejecting parts of ourselves, when we can accept all of it.
Okay, so how do we actually do that? Reclaim that inborn magic? It feels like it gets buried under, expectations and fear.
It does, and unfortunately, there's no simple answer, no quick fix. But Jung does give us a few clues. He says we need to sacrifice solace, get out of our comfort zones, be willing to face the unknown.
Which goes back to what we were talking about before, going down into those depths inside ourselves, even the parts we try to avoid.
Exactly. And it's not about staying down there in the darkness, it's about facing those shadows, integrating them, And then you can come out the other side stronger, more whole, like Jung when he ascends into the sea of light, that moment of pure connection. But even that experience is temporary. He's pulled back down, has to confront his limitations again, and keep working, keep growing.
So it never really ends. We're always changing, always becoming something new.
And I think that's what makes it so amazing. Jung's Red Book isn't some final destination. It's more like a map. It helps you navigate this crazy thing we call being human, exploring all those mysteries within ourselves.
And as we've seen, it's a wild ride. Deserts and serpents and meeting the dead. A lot to process, but so worth it.
Yeah, it really is. And in the end, I think that's what Jung wants us to take away from all of this. Be curious, be brave, and embrace the mystery of it all.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And on that note, we'll leave you to continue exploring Jung's Red Book on your own. What dead voices are you carrying? And what magic are you ready to awaken within yourself?